I got to decide who I am today, because when I decide who I am, then I'm living a life by design versus a life by default. But when you decide, hey, no, I'm going to take control of my life, I'm going to decide who I'm going to be today, right here, right now. That's when you really start defining your next chapters, your next days, your next stories. My sales goals didn't get plastered on a 70-foot scoreboard with my face on it in front of 40,000 people saying I stink, right? People often follow confidence more than they follow competence, which is kind of crazy, right? They follow confidence more than competence. I don't want to look stupid. Well, guess what? You got to look stupid to be great. You gotta. And so we brought him in. And one of the things he used to ask players is, are you so shitty that everything's got to be perfect for you to be good?
This is Sparta!
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick, and this is your podcast for leadership, inspiration, and impact. And I couldn't be more excited for a conversation today for a couple different reasons. But let me introduce our guest, Josh Lifrak. He's the Director of Performance and Coaching at Limitless Minds and a longtime mental performance coach to elite athletes and executives. He led the Chicago Cubs mental skills program during their 2016 World Series run and later worked with the New York Mets, helping players and leaders perform under extreme pressure. Josh is also the author of Win Today, 6 Steps to Mental Resilience, Peak Performance, and a Thriving Life. We're going to talk about neutral thinking, handling adversity in real time, and how to win the moments that matter in business, sports, and at home. Another Josh, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. It's nice to have a namesake, across the way on a podcast. It's awesome.
That's right. Well, so you and I are just getting to know each other. I didn't get to tell you this story ahead of time. So before I ask you any questions, I got to tell you my Cubs story. So I told you I've been a lifelong fan. I grew up in Central Illinois. Most of my friends were Cardinals fans because Cards were just a better organization growing up. So we finally, we had a couple runs. I think that year that Bartman happened, we had a chance to win the World Series. But getting to 2016, I'm laying in bed on Game 6. My buddy's texting me from Cleveland saying, hey, I got a ticket for you. And I'm like, I'm not booking a flight until this game's over. And even though the Cubs were up big in Game 6,
we crushed
I've been there before. I'm not going down that jinx road. So I roll over to my wife and I say, hey, Joe's got a ticket for me just in case this goes well tonight. So I booked my flight at 11 p.m. for a 6 a.m. flight out of Madison. End up in Cleveland around 1 or 2 in the afternoon. We get into the stadium and he ended up buying 2 sets of 2. So we checked out. We had tickets down the first baseline, kind of behind the dugout or right behind home plate. And we get and checked out the seats early and we're like, we're going to take the ones right behind home plate. And this section ends up being 90% Cubs fans. Theo Epstein was 6 rows in front of me and his son sat on his lap most of the game. And then during the rain delay, he went up top there. But the story's so great because there's these 2 meatheads from Chicago, like big dudes, buff dudes in front of us. And we bought our first beer in the game and we didn't buy another beer the rest of the game. We thought the whole time these meatheads, they're passing beers back. And of course, if any Cleveland fan touched them, they're like, get your hands off that fucking beer. And like, they're flexing on them, like pass it back. And so we go this whole game not buying another beer. We're like, who are these guys? Like, whatever. And the rain delay happens. The Cubs end up winning. We'll talk a little bit about that. But we come to find out the next morning, it wasn't them. They were just the enforcers. It was Bill Murray buying for the whole section. He was up front in front of Theo, and I had seen him pass a couple times, but I didn't put 2 and 2 together. But Bill Murray was buying beer for the whole section, the whole game.
Yeah, that tracks.
It was just awesome. Good.
That's pretty
so
good.
Of course the Cubs
that was a great night. I mean, I would say 70% of the stadium was Cubs fans.
Yeah. Like our section 90
is amazing.
And I'll be frank, like people are like, what'd you pay for the ticket? I paid $3,200, but I was like, I'm never going to experience this again. Perhaps it's been 108 years. Like I'm going to that game. I don't care how much it cost. And was able to be there. The only thing that I wish was that I could teleport back to Wrigleyville because Cleveland went dead as soon as the Cubs won.
Yeah, it was, except in the locker room. But yeah, it was pretty dead.
I can imagine. So So I just wanted to share that story. It's one of my favorite stories. One of my favorite, actually, that is my favorite sporting memory ever. I had my poncho because I was at the Badger game the Saturday before that, and it had rained that night against Ohio State. And I just happened to bring it because I looked at the weather, and so we didn't go inside. We were up against the fence during the rain delay, and obviously things worked out for the best. But take us back to 2016. In Chicago, 108 years of history, of misery, curses, all the different things. And I just had this question like percolating in my head because as a fan, I got to see everything from the outside and just the team and Schwarber coming back during the playoffs and just a bunch of talented players that had just come together. But you got to see it and experience it from the inside. Like, what did you see happening between the ears of those players that most of us fans would never notice?
Yeah, I think Joe Madden talked about it a lot, but the moment can get really big if you're focused on the wrong things. And I think one of the things about our players is they were really, step by step focused. They were really process oriented. Joe always used to say the process is fearless, right? And even in the walkout to the Wrigley Field, we had embraced the target, right? We knew we were going to be under pressure. We knew that this thing was not normal, right? And so that was all okay. We're prepared for it. We've been prepared for it since really probably 2012 when Theo took over. So that it wasn't like it was overnight. It really wasn't. It was 4 hard, good years of work that went into it and preparation in terms of the mental side. I mean, I came on in 2014, and in 2014, we were kind of like, we didn't really know who we were. We didn't really have that identity yet, which wasn't a bad thing. It was like, okay, we get to define it. So, fast forward to 2016, we knew who we were really, really, really clearly. You talk about, this is a leadership podcast, and you talk about one of the big keys about being a great leader is to really know yourself really well too. Your positives, your negatives, where you struggle, where you need to delegate to, what you need to take on personally. Those types of things really, 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 truly matter. I talk a lot in the book about how we changed our identity, right? And I talk about it early on in a section called Define Your Story, which is all really about, hey, I got to set my intention. I got to decide who I am today, because when I decide who I am, then I'm living a life by design versus a life by default. I think most of us, we live a life by default. It's just, here's the circumstance. This is what I'm living in. And you know what? Okay, good, bad, whatever. Right. But when you decide, hey, no, I'm going to take control of my life. I'm going to decide who I'm going to be today, right here, right now. That's when you really start defining your next chapters, your next days, your next stories. And I think we did that really, really, really well inside of our locker room. We knew who we were, and who we were is we were fun. We were happy. We were joyous. We thrived under pressure. We quote unquote posted up. It didn't matter what happened the night before. We were going to post up, and we were going to be there, and we were going to give our best. Right? Joe Madden had the respect 90 on the painted on the ground in Mesa, Arizona, in spring training. We respected 90. We respected the game, but we were also really fun loving and just like joyous, And so we knew who we were, though. That's for sure.
That's awesome. Man, there's so much I want to ask about that, but also all this other work that you're doing. But so much has been made of Jason Hayward's talk in the locker room in the rain delay. And because you have such an intimate knowledge of the team, I was curious about, was he the type of leader like everyone was looking for him to step up in that moment? Or did that just happen more organically, where he just felt compelled by God or whatever to just step up like, hey, I need to say something to make sure that we go out there and win this thing?
Jay Hay was a leader the whole year, but he was a quiet leader, right? It was all by example. It was those quiet conversations with your arm around somebody. And, it was really organic. It was really organic. We always said that rainstorm, the cloud that came through, the 15-minute rain delay, that was Ernie Banks just giving us a pause, because Ernie had passed away that year, right? If you remember. Yep. So it was like, that's what it was. It was just, we just needed that pause. Sometimes you just need to catch your breath for a second and to get your shit in order, really. And so that's what Jay Hay did. He felt it. He saw it. He was mature. He was a leader. He had great emotional intelligence. then he just made it happen, man.
Yeah. This wasn't on my questions, but it just came to heart, and I like to keep these things as conversational as possible. You know, we started off with like this big moment, right? You're in the locker room with the Cubs. You earn your way into that, the respect to be hired by the Cubs and many other businesses and organizations, players. Like, I got to imagine someone listening is going, how the heck does someone even get into a position to do that? So what was the journey like for you to get yourself into a position to be this expert that professional teams with the highest stakes, or businesses with the highest stakes, are calling on Josh?
Yeah. So I'm laughing because I have no freaking clue. I'm still kind of pinching myself, but I think it really, I'm joking around because I actually do know, and you pull it back. So my career, I started at a place called IMG Academy, which is down here in Florida. That's why I still live here. We joke, we used to call it the Hogwarts for youth sports, right? It was just like this magical place where, you send your kid and they train in a very professional sport environment from, 10 years old till post-grad. And then there's a bunch of pro athletes that come down there and train there too. I got to tell you, Josh, it is one of the finest training facilities in the world. I cannot state that enough. We used to have people from like Manchester United, AC Milan, whatever. They would come over and be like, hey, what are you guys doing here? F1, what are you guys doing? How are you training that? Like the best organizations in the world would come to Sarasota, Florida, Bradenton, Florida, and just kind of go through how are they training, right? Because we were doing things that were like 5 years ahead of everybody else. In addition to that, a lot of baseball executives would come down, not only because we had a ton of talent at our baseball team that would get drafted, first, second round type guys, but also because they had heard about IMG and they said, what are they doing down there to train? So you would get to meet people. And I think one of the things about the academy that was so special, it wasn't only a training ground for the athletes, it was a training ground for the professionals too. We got to cut our chops by teaching athletes the mental side of the game. And the athletes were from 80 different countries, right? So you just had to figure out how to connect with these people from, whether it be China or Dubai or Mexico or New York, it didn't matter. Like you just had to figure out how to help them get better on their mental game. So I had 10 years of experience down there. I always joke that I should have gotten 4 PhDs for working there, right? But ultimately, what ended up happening is a kind of a crazy story, Josh, is I had there was a job that came available for the Cleveland Indians at the time, Cleveland Guardians now. And I applied for that job. The person who was leading the search had actually been an IMG Academy person 10 years before I was there. And so they knew IMG. And so I interviewed and did the whole thing and got cut before they did live interviews. So I did phone interviews and stuff like that. So I did not get the role with the Cleveland Guardians. However, the Cleveland Guardians and the Chicago Cubs, all those guys, all those execs, they all talk and they're all pretty good friends. And they called the Cubs and they said, hey, we know you've been looking for a director of mental skills for about 10 months. We just interviewed your guy. And so they gave my name to the Cubs, and then the Cubs called me, and then the rest is history. But it was the reason I'll tell you the difference. The difference is the Cleveland Indians were really buttoned up. They were really pro. They were super pro. Like their suits were ironed. You know what I'm saying? And you go to the Cubs, man, and our shirts were untucked, and they probably had stains on them. And it was like I fit in a little bit more with the Cubs than I did with the Indians or the Guardians.
I can just imagine the person that made that decision going, "What an idiot!" After going, we just gave away the guy that helped the mental skills of the Cubs beat us in the World Series. No way, man. They had a great group of people over there doing the mental skills. A lot of them are still there. But I tell you what, it wasn't that's fun. It's funny you say that, but the reality of the situation is we had an incredible mental skills team. And even more than that, we had an incredible player development department, an incredible scouting department, an incredible front office, an incredible coaching staff, and incredible human beings playing the game of baseball. That's why we won. It was all of us. It was all of us. Yeah. And you can tell, I mean, I was saying that somewhat tongue in cheek, but I mean, that was the greatest baseball game I've ever seen played. And I think if the historians were to rank, I mean, the Indians were there, they wouldn't go away. every time we tried to pull away. So you could clearly tell that they were mentally astute and on their stuff as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. I would argue with you, by the way. I thought game 5 was the best game ever played. That was special, man. Because we were dead. We were dead in the water, and KB comes up and somehow bangs that ball on the left center, and it just goes from there, man.
Yeah, I agree. That was a great comeback. I just was thinking about the back and forth and the stakes that were on the line for both teams. That's what got me, I think. But yeah,
it was Hagler Hearns, you know, man. It was Hagler Hearns for 9 innings, 10 innings.
That's right. 10 innings. That's right. All right, let's go to this neutral thinking that you talk often about. In practical terms, what does getting back to neutral look like in the 15 seconds after a mistake, whether that's a bad pitch or a bad decision in a boardroom?
Yeah, so we coined this term at Limitless Minds, the company I work with. We do a lot of training with big companies, Johnson & Johnson, Novartis, McDonald's, you know, like major companies, and we'll do them for anywhere from 10,000 people to 20 people, right? And so neutral thinking, what it is dealing with objective and concrete facts without judging or grading. Okay, so we call it the neutral mindset. There's positive mindset. Hey, everything's great. There's negative mindset. Everything stinks, right? And then in the middle, there's that neutral. It's just, hey, this is what it is. And so there's no judgment involved, right? And what that allows you to do, it allows you to get in action quicker, right? So if I'm not sitting there going, oh, you know what? We didn't hit our sales quota for the last month or the last quarter or whatever. And I don't sit there and go, oh, woe is me. I stink. I'm horrible. This is bad. We go, okay, here's the facts. We didn't hit it. What were the behaviors that we need to add in order to hit it moving forward in order to make up for it, right? And so it's like it eliminates excuses. It eliminates pointing fingers. It eliminates victimhood. It's just what it is. Here it is. This is neutral. These are the facts. I'm dealing with what's so. I'm not creating a giant story around it, right? It's just what's so. And if I want to go from A to B, then I'm going to have to do A, B, C, D, and E to get there. So let's get to work.
Yeah, that's so good. It's just data, right? But we get emotional around data. And that's the thing I work with the leadership teams a lot is having the data is good, but the data needs to actually drive action. So getting the right data, the right KPIs, but the data that and the measurables that you're tracking should drive action.
Well, that's where it happens, right? We often talk about the fact that, you know, I had the opportunity again being around some elite performers and performers in high stress situations. You know, it's a little different. Hey, I didn't hit my sales goals this month. Well, guess what? My sales goals didn't get plastered on a 70-foot scoreboard with my face on it in front of 40,000 people saying I stink, right? Like that didn't just happen, right? So the pressure is real. Like you feel it in the world of sports. And one of the things I quickly learned that was really interesting, because coming from the world of sports psychology, right? When you think about that, back in the day, sports psychology was like, hey man, what's wrong with that guy? What's going on with that guy? Like, why is he talking to the sports psych? Has he got the yips or something? He can't figure, does he have no confidence? What's going on with that guy? But what was interesting is when I got into the field, it was the Hall of Fame players. It was the Peyton Mannings. It was the Russell Wilsons. It was the Derek Jeters that were seeking out the mental skills people because they understood, hey, training your mind is a competitive advantage. And so that was one of the things that really jumped out at me. And once you start training your mind, you start recognizing, hey, these are the thoughts that hold me back from performing the right actions well. So let me get rid of those thoughts. What are the thoughts that are going to help me perform those actions really well? Okay, let me put those in. What are the things I can do? Visualize, breathe, whatever. Yeah, let's go. And so I think that's one of the big things too. You kind of see it. I definitely see it with some of the more successful organizations that I've worked with, like culturally. You can see them putting their values into action over and over and over again. I write about that actually in the book, later on in the book after Choose Growth, because when you choose growth, that's one of the steps to having a thriving life. When you choose growth, you can really accurately look at yourself and go, hey, okay, A, B, and C are working. D, E, and F are not working. What do I want to start? What do I want to stop? What do I want to continue? And then you just get that logical and things just go.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so good. Speaking of, I think this is part one of your steps, right? So your book lays out the 6 steps to mental resilience. Which step do you high achievers resist the most? And what does that resistance cost them, let's say over a decade of their life?
Yeah, I'm going to say I would think that most high achievers will resist the last step, which is I've called it mile zero. What mile zero is? I don't know. Have you ever been to Key West, Florida? Ever been down there? So yeah, Key West, right? Do you remember any of it? Every time I go to Key West, I don't remember the whole week. I'm just like, it's a blur.
No, you're right. I can remember specific bars I've visited and had a beer, but that's about it.
It's a funny town. Ernest Hemingway's from there. I lived there and the whole thing. But there's a signpost there, and it's mile zero, and it's on Route 1. Route 1, of course, goes from Key West all the way up to Maine, and it's mile zero. And you ask people about it, and is that the beginning or is that the end? I don't know. It's just mile zero. And so one of the things that I think people resist is the reset, and the recognition that, hey, regardless of what I accomplished yesterday, regardless of what happened yesterday, I got to show up today, right? I got to show up right here, right now in order to win today, because today's only happening now. That's it. And so mile zero is all about, okay, great. Maybe there were some lessons I learned from yesterday. Maybe there's some good stuff that happened. Maybe it created some momentum, but today's a new day, and I got to bring that same energy. I got to bring that same enthusiasm. I got to bring that same focus. I got to bring that same determination today as I did yesterday. And that's all that matters, right? Because today, the performance doesn't care, right? The performance doesn't have emotions. It's just either I'm going to do the things that require me to be successful in the performance, or I'm not. That's it. And so that's what mile zero is about. And I think people do resist that, because especially when they're successful, you tend to okay, I'm going to sit back. I get comfortable, right? I get comfortable. And that's the thing that it can be really challenging.
Yeah, I was literally just going to ask why. Why do they resist it? I mean, or why? Oh man, why would they complacency is insidious, right?
Yeah.
And so if you let that creep in, if you've ever let it creep in your life before, you know that it can take over, and all of a sudden you're not at the top. You can very quickly find yourself at the bottom or on a losing streak, or getting the yips, or whatever it may be. So once you've learned that lesson, why would you ever think that you could become comfortable again?
Yeah, well, because that's how the brain is set up, man. like that. This is like neuroscience, right? And so there's something called the negativity bias in psychology. I do talk about this in the book as well, and Stop the Storm. But your brain is set up for two specific reasons. Number one is to keep you alive, right? That's its major operating procedure is, hey, I'm going to keep myself alive. And then number two is to keep us comfortable. So both of those things is what the brain is geared toward. In order to that keeps us alive, it keeps us surviving, but it doesn't allow us to thrive. And that's the whole key, is how do we thrive? And that's what we're fighting against. We're fighting against human nature, which is kind of crazy in a lot of ways, because it's not natural. It's not natural to be, hey, I'm going to reset today. Great. We crushed those numbers yesterday. I'm going to go celebrate. No, it's like, okay, great. I celebrated yesterday, but guess what? It's 8 a.m. now. We got to go. So that's where it kind of comes in. And I think that's why people do push back about it. And it happened to us with Chicago. No ifs and buts about it, man. We won that World Series. We were hungover for, probably until about June of the next season.
Yeah, it's so hard to stay on top, so hard to win back-to-back, so hard to continue that momentum. So I understand that. If I had to rename your chapter, I think back to the worst coach I ever had, but taught me a very valuable lesson. And here's what I'd rename it.
I'm bracing for impact right now, Josh.
Nobody reads yesterday's fucking newspaper.
Yeah.
That was literally said to me in the film room my senior year of high school. I got to play college football, but this was my senior year coach. Terrible leader, terrible coach. But even the worst ones can teach you some lessons.
You can learn a lot.
I had a great game. Well, a lot of what not to do, but this was in fact a good lesson to your mile zero. I had a great game the Friday before, 10 catches, 140 some yards, couple touchdowns. And I'm yucking it up as we're re-going through film, and with, elbowing one of my buddies, you see that, whatever, literally pauses the tape and says, Kosnick, no one reads yesterday's fucking newspaper. We're on to next week. Got the message.
Yeah. Yep.
So, no, it's a great, great principle. So, in Kairos language, this is my world, but I want to draw a parallel here for you. we talk about the 5 bridges. So spiritual, internal, relationships, environment. But environment to me is your professional, your financial, your joy and creative, and then legacy. So like, where do you see mental performance work intersecting with the most with either faith and identity, not just tactics?
Yeah, I talked about it before, but okay. So let me roll back. When I first got to Chicago, one of my offices was in Mesa, Arizona, right? That's where we do our spring training, and that's where we do a lot of the rehabs for guys that get injured. That's where like all the rookies come in to train. They have a rookie team there. So I was down there. I was in Arizona a bunch, and I had an office down there. And the first thing I put up in the office was a tapestry of Ganesh, and Ganesh is the Hindu god of removing obstacles. The biggest obstacle that we have often is ourselves, right? And so what mental training allows us to do is kind of get out of our own way and get over ourselves, right? Because then we can kind of clear this clutter that we have in our brain a lot about, this is the way it's supposed to be, or this happened or that happened, the whys, this, that, the other thing. And we can just get grounded in what's so. The other thing, you talk about spirituality, is when you can get away from yourself and get out of like opinions and things like that, we can be really free to be open. And I think being open, that's really like, for me, in terms of my own spirituality, that's the big key. That's the big key. Being open, trusting, having faith. Those are real things in the world of performance. Right? Because if I don't have faith in my training, if I don't have faith in my teammates, if I don't believe in what I'm doing, if I don't have faith that I'm being taken care of in some way, shape, or form, then what am I doing? So I think that's a big part of it too. I get to spend a lot of time with Russell Wilson, as he's the owner of our the company Limitless Minds, and his faith is super, super strong. I learned so much from him just being around him and listening to him. And what I'm really recognizing is a lot of the same principles that are in whatever Bible that you read, they are really the same principles that we teach in mental training. Not that I'm a religious person, or in terms of like a spiritual leader, but it's really amazing. Like, controlling what you can control, having faith in your abilities, not being pulled by temptation, right? Those are distractions. How do we focus on what's important now? Those types of things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So good. So you've coached both the elite athletes and senior executives. Where are business leaders actually weaker than pro athletes from a mindset standpoint? And why do you think that is?
So they haven't had the training for specific mindset tools. I was always like I'll give you this example. In the world of sports, baseball, basketball, golf, tennis, boxing, MMA, it doesn't matter. You talk to the athletes, you ask them, hey, have you ever done this thing called visualization or heard of visualization, mental rehearsal? Every single one of them. Yeah, man, do that every time. Literally, I was working in IndyCar racing last year, and I was talking to one of the drivers. He was like, yeah, I started visualizing when I was like 11, and it's just normal. That's just what you do in the world of sports. You're going to see your performance before you ever go and do it. Leaders, when you bring up this concept of visualization, they're like, wait, what's that? Never heard of that. What's going on there? Especially people maybe that were in sales are now frontline leaders and things like that. We see it all the time where you talk about visualization and they only think about it in terms of manifestation. Visualization at its core is all about process orientation. It's all about seeing yourself doing the thing you want to do with the right energy, with the right focus, with the right skill set, with the right technique, with the right tactics, right? It's all that process orientation. So the elite athletes, that's how they see it. A lot of times when you hear executives or salespeople or stuff, they only just see the result. They only say, hey, yeah, me walking across the stage, getting President's Club, whatever, right? Instead of seeing themselves grinding on call after call after call after call, and seeing themselves being really present with the client that's in front of them, or seeing themselves in front of the boardroom, really listening and being clear about their message, those types of things. So I think that's
I love
the
that
biggest one.
I was just going to ask on that. Give us, how would you walk through someone either in the boardroom are grinding on the process, walk them through, because we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to the show. Walk them through how you would walk a client through starting to form their visualization of a specific task.
Yeah. So we'd have to figure out what that task is, right? First and foremost. So maybe it's just, let's just do something. I'm presenting to my investors. Okay?
Yeah.
Right? We're talking about entrepreneurs that have investors. Okay. So I'm presenting to my investors. Okay. Number one, separation is in the preparation. Do I have all the information that I need? Do I have it organized, clear, and concise? Concise, which is a key word there, right? Because you can lose people pretty quickly in a presentation. Number two, all right, how do I need to be? How do I need to be in front of these investors, right? People often follow confidence more than they follow competence, which is kind of crazy, right? They follow confidence more than competence. And so even if whatever, you want to be competent, obviously, and you want to show that you're competent, but walking in with confidence, what does that look like? How do I hold myself? Where am I standing in the room? How am I answering questions? Am I being open? Am I going to be defensive? Those types of things. So I would definitely walk them through that. And then you would, okay, once we got the presentation in order, let's go through it. Let's go through it. We could practice it. But in addition, let me rehearse it in my mind and go through it over and over and over again. So I am so crystal clear when I get there that I got this thing down pat. And so the least thing I'm nervous about, I could turn that nervousness into excitement, right? I could turn the nervousness into excitement. And now I get to go present versus have to present.
Yes. So good. It just reminded me, Alec, who I was referencing earlier, who runs the podcast, we were doing a talk last year. I give quite a few keynotes, and I get off stage and he's like, I have no idea how you do that. He's like, I didn't see you practice once. I didn't, every talk's a little bit different. And I was like, just because you don't see me practice does not mean it's not going on up here. It's always going through. And because I stayed there for the whole day and I spoke last, but I was observing, watching other speakers, running through my heads. I was actually jotting some notes that I could intertwine into my talk from the other speakers to intertwine some things together. Like that was all going through my head. And so my answer to him now that you've laid this out here would be like, it's visualization. It's what's going on in my head the whole time before I go up and perform.
Yeah, without a doubt. You're playing it out before you ever do it. Right? We always talked about in baseball, it begins before it begins. It begins before it begins. So having that kind of mindset of, like it's already started. It's already started. So you might as well prepare as if you're actually going into it already,
Yep, that's right. So you've said leaders can start transforming right here, right now, instead of waiting for perfect conditions. What lie about timing do you see leaders believing that keeps them from, stuck in Chronos time versus living in Kairos time?
Yeah. So we used to have a saying at the Cubs, be present, not perfect. Be present, not perfect. And I think the other thing is I had the opportunity when I was at IMG, we like I said, it was a world-class training facility. And one of the groups that came through was the special warfare from the Navy. So the SEALs. And so we got a chance to go out to Coronado for a little bit. And they talked about fire than aim a lot of the time, where they would, that whole concept of like, everything's got to be perfect to take the shot. Well, a lot of times there is no perfect time to take the shot. And so, let's fire and then aim after that. That can accelerate growth and accelerate learning really, really fast. That's kind of the other thing too. I think action and experience and just getting out there and putting yourself out there. And, this is where the ego comes in a lot, Josh, like, hey, I don't want to look stupid. Well, guess what? You got to look stupid to be great. You gotta. Like it's funny. We talk about at Limitless Minds, we talk about the illusion of choice all the time, which is like, if I want to be at the highest levels, there's certain things I'm just going to have to do. Like you don't have a choice about them. One of those is you're going to have to fail. Another one's you're going to have the right mindset to be resilient to come back from that failure, right? Another one's you're going to have to think the right way in terms of, hey, I got to at least stay neutral and get logical versus I'm running on my emotions all the time, right? So those are like really big keys. And I think, that question is a great question because Yeah, like we do want to be perfect. We do. You know why? Because it's safe. If everything's perfect, it's safe. There is no perfect though. There is no perfect. But I think what happens there too, now you got me thinking, Josh, is like we talk about ego, and this rolls back into the win today is define your story. If I decide who I'm going to be, no matter what the situation dictates, then I know I can rely on myself. I think what happens is people, especially when they go into uncertainty, they go in with like, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? And it's like, well, are you strong enough? Like, yeah, you're strong. We used to, one of the guys I worked with that we hired to come into the Cubs was a gentleman named Ken Ravizza. And Kenny was the godfather of sports psychology within baseball. He was a really good friend of Joe's. And so we brought him in. And one of the things he used to ask players is, are you so shitty that everything's got to be perfect for you to be good? It's
a great question.
Right? Is that how bad you are? Like your ankle can't hurt to be good? Like your shoulder has to feel perfect to be good? Like, what are you talking about, bro? So like, because in baseball specifically, everything hurts all the time. Like you're never going to be 100%. Maybe when you walk out of spring training, but after that, no chance.
Yeah. And the other thing that just keeps rumbling through my head as you've been laying this out so well is I know that Trevor Moawad was part of your organization before his untimely passing. And when he wrote in his book about Russell was the interception in the Super Bowl, right? And in that moment, you have to be willing to throw that pass to win the Super Bowl and be the hero. And you also have to be willing to get the ball intercepted and lose that game. And it was funny. So I'm a huge Russell fan because he was a Badger, but he executed the play that was called. Malcolm Butler made a better play.
Yeah.
And you have to live with the outcome either way.
Yeah, there's so many things about that play that we've learned since. And first of all, one of the amazing things, credit to Russ here, is he gets out of Seattle, he goes to San Diego, he locks himself into training, and he has the best statistical season he's ever had in his entire life the next year, right? So there, like you could shy away from that moment, or you can run through it, right? We talk about the bison, right? Bison running into the storm versus cows walking away from it, right? And that's exactly what he did. And like I said, if you met him, you'd just be blown away. This is one of the most mentally tough people I've ever had the privilege of even just talking to. That being said, the challenge of potential failure that's scary, right? That's scary. What if? A lot of times we say what if, and we only think about the failure. Well, how about saying what if and then talking about the success of it? Like that's going to motivate you even more, right? Than hey, what if this works out? What if I sell the company? What if we build it this way? That's awesome, right? That gets super exciting when you can talk about it like that. The other thing to note about that, Josh, that interception was I don't know if you know this, but Malcolm Butler the entire week he was messing that play up. He was making a mistake on it every single time, and they called him out in meetings and they called him out in film. And then he practiced it more and more and he visualized it. And then sure enough, boom, it happened.
Made a tremendous play. Yeah, it's incredible. I was thinking through one of the questions I wanted to ask you was about failure. And obviously I don't want you to breach confidentiality on anything, but was there a high-level athlete or perhaps even a business leader that had some sort of high-level failure that's helped shape some of your mental resilience, or how you coach and think about mental resilience today?
I'm not going to put any of the athletes or any of the people that I've worked with. I'll just use myself. In 2019, I failed miserably. I'd been the director of the mental skills program from 2014. So it was my 5th year in the organization with the Cubs. They were adjusting a little bit of how they did things, maybe leaning a little bit more on analytics. They hired some more people that served as an intermediary between myself and, the president, Theo, and those guys. And I did not handle it well. I was emotional. I was rebellious. I was defensive. And rather than learning and growing, I was going to show them who was right. Fast forward to the end of that year, it was time for me to leave. And so that lesson of me being kind of rebellious within a system and not pulling the oars the same way, like that just didn't work, right? So that was it. That was a huge failure for me. And really what I learned from that is two things. Number one was, as I look back on that, I handled it wrong, but at least I was true to my values. And my values were person first, right? That's what I believed. I believed that better people make better Cubs. And that's what I always wanted to lean into, was all about humanity. The way baseball went, it started to go more towards this analytical thing, and that was going to be a little bit more important. So my value system said, hey, it was time to move on. So that was good. The other thing that I really learned from that is, as bad as it may seem today, as good as it can be in the future. And we tell a story often with Limitless Minds about, this Chinese farmer, and it's like a parable, and it's good luck, bad luck, who knows, right? There's all these things that happen. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, but the farmer just keeps saying.
Can you tell that story? I actually have not had anyone say.
Oh, you haven't heard it? Okay, perfect.
No, I have, but I don't think a lot of my audience has, and I think it would be a really appropriate story for them to hear.
Yeah, sure. So the story is, there's a farmer, a Chinese farmer, and he has this like little farm outside of the village. And one day, one of his horses, he's only got one horse in the stable, and it helps him plow the fields and keep the crops. And it escapes one day, just runs off to the woods. And all the townspeople come up and they're like, "Oh, it's such horrible luck. I can't believe it. What bad luck." And the farmer simply says, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" And then like a couple weeks later, that horse that ran off comes back to the farm, and he's got a friend with him, and he's got another horse with him. So now the farmer has two horses, and the townspeople are like, "Oh my gosh, what good luck. You're so lucky." And the guy's like, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" Well, that new horse that just came to the farm, it's got to get broken in to get domesticated. So the farmer asks his only son, "Hey, can you break in the horse?" So the son's breaking in the horse, and the son gets thrown, breaks his arm, breaks his wrist, messes up his shoulder. And so now the kid the son is, unable to help around the farm. And all the people come up and they're like, "Oh, such bad luck. Your son got hurt trying to help the horse." And he's like, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" 2 weeks later, the army comes into town, and they're conscripting all able-bodied young men to the army to go to war. And his son is not able-bodied at that time, because he's got a broken arm and a broken elbow and can't work. So good luck, bad luck, who knows?
So good. It's so, I love it every time I hear it. And I just know that there has been at least one person that has not heard that and needed to hear it today. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because when you look back, right, and you think about the toughest times you've had, right? I was talking about, that was 2019. I went through this whole period, Josh, where it was like, I knew I was done in August, and our contracts last through October 31st in baseball. So I knew I wasn't coming back. They knew I wasn't coming back. And, I was in this like really like, just kind of in flux. I was uncertain. I didn't know. And I lost 20 pounds of like anxiety weight there. I was throwing up every morning. I was getting really thin. I was just, really nervous, because this is like providing for my family, right? Like, I got a kid in private school. I got this, I got that. And it's just like, oh my gosh, how health insurance, like, what am I going to do there? Right. Yeah. And so I was like, it was really a really, really, really tense time, but fast forward, and that was the springboard to me being an entrepreneur for myself. And now being able to work from home and being able to, like coach my kids' basketball teams, which I was never able to do in the world of baseball. I was traveling 200 days a year. So it was just never home. And so now it's like, oh, wow, had that not occurred in 2019, had I not gone through that, I wouldn't have A, gotten hooked up with Limitless Minds as much as I have. B, I wouldn't have seen, oh, there is a possibility to have my own world, my own company, and do my own thing and get this message out to a broader audience. And, C, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today. So, good luck, bad luck, who knows?
Life happens for us, not to us.
Hell yeah, man. Say it louder for the people in the back of the room.
It's, and unfortunately, I feel like you have to go through those seasons of peril to understand, and then actually lean into the fire to actually know the good that can come on the other side.
Absolutely.
When you freeze and stop and quit and play the victim, you're never going to know the good on the other side.
No, sir.
So I got two final questions. I always have a final question, but one I wanted to ask before we hop off here. I want you to fast forward, say 10, 20 years. If leaders actually adopted the Win Today framework, what would you hope their spouses, kids, and teams would say is different about them?
They're more present. They were more peaceful. And, they would have accomplished everything they wanted to accomplish without having the frantic stress around them, right? It's just, hey, let's plod along. And I think one of the things I see all the time from when I work with leaders is that the leadership principles and the things we talk about, whether it be the 6 steps in Win Today, or if it's the stuff we talk about with Limitless Minds a lot, it's, man, you know what? I thought this was just going to help with work, but I'm having better conversations at dinner. I'm more connected to my family. I'm more connected to my kids. Like that's the juice, man. That's the juice. Like that is the stuff that keeps me going and gets me so fired up to get out there every single day. And that's, that's what I hope.
Yeah, I love that. You and I are kindred spirits in that regard. I work with entrepreneurs every day, and I want to make sure that they're not just leaving their family the table scraps, or the people they care about most the table scraps, because too often entrepreneurship just takes everything we have, but then when we finally get what we thought we wanted, too often they're on their third marriage, or their estranged relationship with their kids, or they're too deep in the bottle, or something else has gone awry because they kept their sole focus on the business and their eyes off the prize of life. So I'm fighting to make sure every day that they win, not just in business, but in life.
Yeah. And it's really like, I think a lot of times they just get away from their true core values, right? And it's just like, what are those core values? Do you even know what your core values are? First of all, but then secondly, are you honoring them, and are you letting them in to help you make the right decisions for those moments?
Well, yeah, and by honoring them, are you living them out? Are you letting them guide you as a filter in your day-to-day life? Because that's what I work with on companies a lot. Is they got them, they crafted them, they're beautiful, they're on the wall.
Nobody knows them.
Not used. That's true. Like 90% of the employees don't know them. They're not using them as the filter. They're not using them in coaching. When someone screws up, how are you violating a value here? Like, they're not living them. They're beautiful artwork on the wall.
Yep, absolutely. I talk about that with one of the companies I worked with in the book. We use that exact example of, like, this is a company, I'm telling you, it's a restaurant group in Philadelphia, and they live their core values better than anybody I've ever seen. And they've had the best 5 years they've ever had in terms of their financials. The last 5 years I've been working with them because they honor their values and they live by them. It's unbelievable.
That's awesome to hear. I love hearing and seeing companies like that. You can tell, especially if you're astute enough like Josh and I, when you walk into a company or a store or anything like that actually lives by their core values, you can feel it, you can see it, you can touch it. It's there.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, last question I always ask, and this can be on anything that we've spoken of or anything that comes to your heart, but what is one unpopular belief that you hold to be true you think the world would mostly disagree with you on?
So I believe Arsenal Football Club is the best soccer team in the world. No, that's not. that one gets outside of us Gunners. Nobody believes that. What's one popular opinion? Unpopular opinion. That's a great question, Josh. I'm gonna say like that we don't have a say. I think that a lot of people don't think they have a say. They don't think they got a choice. And I think that is exactly wrong. One of the quotes that I absolutely live by is, things turn out best for those that make the best out of the way things turn out. That's John Wooden. And so we always have a choice. John Wooden, of course, the American basketball coach, for those of you who don't know.
Yep.
But we always have a choice. That's the privilege of being a human being, is we have a choice. And so whether something great's happening, whether something horrible's happening, you have a choice of how you respond to it, not how you react. Reactions just happen in the moment, right? You go to the doctor, you hit your knee, your leg goes up. That's a reaction, right? A negative thought pops in your mind. That's typically a reaction. But a response is more thoughtful and it's more thought out. And we have a choice always of our responses. And when we choose our responses based on our values, we get to define our life versus live our life by default.
So good. Love that. All right. So where can the Spartan audience find you, find your book, get in touch if they want to do any work with you?
Yeah. Joshua Lifrak, LIFRAK.com. That's got all my info on it. The best place to connect with me is LinkedIn. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Just jump on LinkedIn, shoot me a message. I'll get back to you. You can buy the book. You can pre-order the book, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, if you're in the UK, Waterstones. But you can also just go on the website, joshualifrak.com. And you can just, there's a page in there and you can just click on any of the links and they'll take you right to it.
Spartans, you know what to do. Get on the pre-order list. Let's support Josh and the new book. As you can see, he dropped a ton of wisdom for all of us today. This is a really special episode. I didn't tell Josh this to start it, but this is number 250.
Heck yeah, so man. Let's go.
250th episode in the 250th birthday of America. So this is a special episode. So let's forward this, share it, like it, do all the things the YouTube kids tell us to do, and share it far and wide. Remember that good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.